I remember the day my world shattered like it was yesterday. The screech of tires, the blare of sirens, and then the silence that followed. My husband, Tom, gone in an instant on that rain-slicked highway outside New York City. I was Emily then, 56 years old, an accountant buried in ledgers and loss, trying to hold together the pieces of our life for Sophia, my 16-year-old daughter. She was my anchor and my storm. Her grief a wild thing that lashed out in tears and slammed doors. We were adrift in our brownstone apartment, the city's hum a mocking reminder of how alone we felt. But then there was David. Oh, David. He appeared like a beacon in the fog of my despair, the 45-year-old CEO of the firm where I'd spent decades crunching numbers. Tall, with salt and pepper hair that framed his sharp blue eyes, he had a way of speaking that made you feel seen, truly seen. It started innocently enough. A sympathetic ear in the break room, a shared coffee after a late-night audit. "Emily," he'd say, his voice low and warm. "You're stronger than you know. Let me help carry some of that weight." His words wrapped around me like a soft blanket on a chilly autumn evening, pulling me from the edge. As weeks turned to months, our conversations deepened. He'd share stories of his own losses, a divorce that left him hollow, ambitions that kept him up at night. I found myself opening up, revealing the vulnerabilities I'd hidden even from Tom. Sophia noticed the change in me first. "Mom, you're smiling more," she said one evening over takeout pizza, her eyes cautious but hopeful. I brushed it off, but inside, a spark had ignited. Our first real date was under the twinkling lights of a rooftop restaurant in Manhattan, the skyline sprawling like a sea of stars. David held my hand across the table, his thumb tracing gentle circles on my skin, sending shivers that had nothing to do with the cool breeze. "You deserve this, Emily," he murmured, his gaze locking onto mine with an intensity that made my heart race. We talked for hours, about dreams deferred, about the magic of second chances. When he leaned in, his lips brushing mine in a kiss that tasted of promise and possibility, I felt alive again. It was as if he'd unlocked a door I'd forgotten existed. Our romance bloomed in secret, stolen moments amid the chaos of corporate life. Lunches turned into lingering afternoons in Central Park, where we'd sit on benches, his arm around my shoulders, whispering sweet nothings that made me blush like a schoolgirl. "You're my mystery, Emily," he'd say, his fingers intertwining with mine. "Every day with you unfolds like a new chapter." Hotels became our sanctuaries, elegant suites overlooking the Hudson where we'd share wine and laughter, his understanding touch mending the fractures in my soul. He knew how to make me feel cherished, desired in ways that went beyond the physical, stirring emotions I thought had died with Tom. Sophia was my constant worry, though. She was navigating high school with the weight of her father's absence, her grades slipping, her friends a distant memory. I tried to be there for her, but David's pull was magnetic. One night, as I tucked her in, a ritual we'd clung to, she looked up at me with those big, questioning eyes. "Is Mr. Hargrove making you happy, Mom?" I hesitated, then nodded. "He is, sweetie. But you're my everything." She smiled faintly, but I sensed the undercurrent of unease. It was during one of those late office hours that the first seed of doubt took root. David had stepped out for a meeting, leaving his desk unlocked, a rarity for someone so meticulous. Curiosity, or perhaps intuition, drew me to a file peeking from his drawer. It was labeled Confidential Transactions, filled with spreadsheets detailing wire transfers to offshore accounts, sums that didn't match our client ledgers. Names I didn't recognize, dates that overlapped with company audits I'd overseen. My stomach twisted. Was this an error, or something more sinister? I shoved the file back, heart pounding, but the questions festered. That evening, over dinner at a cozy Italian spot in the village, David was his usual charming self, toasting to our future. His hand on my knee under the table sent familiar warmth through me, but my mind raced. "Everything okay?" he asked, sensing my distraction. I forced a smile. "Just tired." But as we walked hand in hand through the bustling streets, his arm protective around my waist, I couldn't shake the nagging whisper. What if he's hiding something? Love had blinded me before, with Tom's secrets about his health that he'd kept until it was too late. Could I trust this man who'd revived my heart? Days blurred into a haze of affection and suspicion. David showered me with gestures, a bouquet of roses delivered to my desk, a weekend getaway to the Hamptons where we strolled beaches at sunset, his whispers promising forever. "I can't imagine life without you," he'd say, pulling me close in the golden light. Yet, at work, I'd catch glimpses, hurried phone calls, locked doors. Sophia, too, seemed wary. "He's nice, Mom, but be careful." Her words echoed my fears. One rainy afternoon, alone in his office again, I couldn't resist. I pulled the file once more, my fingers trembling. Deeper pages revealed discrepancies, millions funneled through shell companies. My breath caught. This wasn't a mistake. It screamed fraud. But as I heard footsteps approaching, I slammed the drawer shut, pulse thundering. David entered, smiling. "Miss me?" He drew me into an embrace, his lips finding mine in a kiss that melted my resolve. In that moment, doubt warred with desire. What was he capable of? And how far would my love let me ignore the shadows creeping in? The city lights flickered outside, mirroring the turmoil in my chest. Our romance was a whirlwind, intoxicating and perilous. I wanted to believe in us, in the way his touch made me feel whole. But the mystery of that file loomed, pulling me toward a truth that could unravel everything. What happens next? Even now, recounting it, my heart quickens with the memory of that fragile bliss, teetering on the edge of revelation. The rain hadn't stopped for days, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. New York's skyline blurred through my office window, a gray haze that matched the weight in my chest. I was Emily, 56, still reeling from the file I'd found in David's office, those cryptic transactions that whispered fraud. His kisses still lingered on my lips from our last stolen moment in a dimly lit hotel suite, his hands warm and sure, promising a future I craved. But the numbers didn't lie, and neither did the dread curling in my gut. I couldn't ignore it anymore. Late at night, when Sophia was asleep and the city hummed below our brownstone, I pored over copies I'd made of David's file. My accountant's brain kicked in, tracing patterns. Millions siphoned from client accounts, funneled through shell companies with names like Horizon Ventures and Eclipse Holdings. The amounts were staggering, tied to dates when I'd been buried in audits, trusting David's assurances that everything was fine. My heart sank as I realized the scale. This wasn't a mistake. It was a betrayal, deliberate and cold. I confronted him the next day, my hands trembling as I stood in his sleek corner office. The Manhattan skyline sparkled behind him, a cruel contrast to the darkness unfolding. "David," I said, voice steady despite the chaos inside. "What are these transactions? Offshore accounts? Millions unaccounted for?" I held up the copied pages, my evidence. His face, usually so warm, hardened for a split second before melting into concern. "Emily, sweetheart," he said, stepping closer, his hand grazing my arm in that familiar, disarming way. "You're misreading this. It's just complex client deals. Above your pay grade, honestly. Trust me." Trust. The word stung. His eyes held mine, soft and pleading. And for a moment, I wavered, remembering the way he'd held me under starlit skies, whispering dreams of a life together. But I shook my head. "No, David. These don't add up. I need the truth." His jaw tightened, and he turned away, pacing to the window. "You're letting doubt ruin us," he said, voice low. "I thought we were building something real." The hurt in his tone cut me, but I stood firm. "If it's real, you'll explain this. Now." He didn't. Instead, he deflected, promising to clarify later, kissing my forehead before ushering me out. That night, alone in my apartment, I cried, torn between the man who'd rekindled my heart and the evidence that he was a liar. Sophia noticed my distance. "Mom, what's wrong?" she asked, her teenage defiance softened by worry. I couldn't tell her, not yet. "Just work stress, honey," I lied, hating myself for it. Then it all unraveled. A week later, the FBI stormed our office. Agents in dark suits flashed badges, seizing computers and files. My name was on their list. My name. David had framed me. Forged documents surfaced, emails I'd never sent, signatures I hadn't written, all tying me to the fraud. I was escorted out in handcuffs, my colleagues' shocked whispers slicing through me. Sophia's face when I called her from the precinct, pale, furious, haunted me. "How could you, Mom?" she screamed over the phone. "You've ruined us!" She believed I'd tarnished our family, that I'd betrayed her father's memory. David's betrayal was surgical. He'd planted evidence so meticulously that even I doubted myself for a fleeting moment. In interrogation, I pleaded my innocence, but the agents showed me spreadsheets with my initials, bank records linked to my name. "We have proof, Mrs. Carter," they said. My world spun. David visited me once, his face a mask of regret. "I'm sorry it came to this," he whispered through the glass, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "I tried to protect you." I wanted to scream, to claw through the barrier and demand why he'd destroyed me. But I only stared, numb as he walked away. Sophia refused to see me. She stayed with my sister, her texts cold and sparse. "I can't believe you'd do this," she wrote. My heart broke anew each time. Alone in my cell, awaiting trial, I replayed every moment with David. His tender words, the way he'd pull me close in quiet hotel rooms, promising forever. Had it all been a lie? The romance that had revived me now felt like a trap, his affection a calculated move to keep me blind. But I wasn't done. In the sleepless nights, I pieced together memories of the file, recalling details I'd overlooked, a signature here, a date there. I had one chance, an old backup drive I'd kept at home, untouched by David's schemes. If I could get it to my lawyer, it might hold the original documents, the ones with his name. The thought fueled me, a flicker of hope in the wreckage. As the trial loomed, I clung to that hope, but the cost was clear. My daughter's trust was shattered, our family fractured. David's betrayal had torn us apart, and even if I cleared my name, I feared Sophia might never forgive me. The city outside my cell window glittered indifferent as I faced the fight of my life. What would come next? Would truth be enough to mend what was broken? My heart raced with the uncertainty, the mystery of my own future as gripping as the love that had led me here. The courtroom air was thick with tension, the kind that presses on your chest like a storm about to break. I sat there, Emily at 56, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, staring at the polished wood of the witness stand. New York's federal courthouse loomed around me, its grandeur a stark reminder of how far I'd fallen. From a grieving widow finding love to a woman accused of fraud. David sat across the room, his once charming face now a mask of defiance avoiding my gaze. Sophia wasn't there. She couldn't bear it. Her resentment a wall I couldn't breach. The trial dragged on for weeks, a barrage of testimonies and evidence. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Clara, hammered at the forged documents, emails with my name but timestamps that didn't match my schedule, signatures that forensic experts deemed imitations. "This is a setup," she argued, her voice cutting through the murmurs. But the prosecution painted me as complicit, blinded by romance. They paraded our relationship like a scandal. Dinners, hotel stays, his gifts. I felt exposed, my heart's revival twisted into something shameful. On the stand, I recounted every detail, the file I'd discovered, David's deflections, his tender words that had masked deceit. I loved him, I admitted, voice cracking. But love doesn't erase the truth. The turning point came from that old backup drive I'd remembered in my cell. Clara had retrieved it from my apartment, buried in a drawer of forgotten mementos. It held the original files, untampered spreadsheets with David's digital signature embedded, timestamps predating my involvement. "Exhibit 47, Clara declared, projecting the documents for the jury. Gasps rippled through the room as the discrepancies glared. Millions embezzled, clients defrauded, all under his command. David's lawyers scrambled, but the evidence was ironclad. He crumbled under cross-examination, his charm evaporating into stammered denials. The verdict came on a crisp fall day, leaves swirling outside like confetti. "Not guilty," the judge intoned. Relief washed over me, but it was bittersweet. David was convicted, guilty on all counts, sentenced to 15 years for fraud and obstruction. As they led him away in cuffs, he glanced back, his eyes holding a mix of regret and something darker. I turned away, the man who'd whispered promises of forever, now reduced to a cautionary tale. Freedom tasted hollow. Sophia still blamed me, her texts curt. "Glad it's over." She moved back home, but the silence between us was deafening. Dinners eaten in front of the TV, conversations clipped. "You let him in, Mom," she said one night, tears in her eyes. "After Dad." Her words pierced me, echoing my own guilt. I quit the firm the next day, the place tainted by betrayal. With my savings and a small inheritance from Tom, I opened a cozy bookstore in Brooklyn, a haven of shelves lined with novels, the scent of fresh pages a balm for my soul. Second Chapter Books, I called it, a nod to new beginnings. Mending things with Sophia took time, like coaxing a wilted flower back to life. I invited her to help at the store, stacking shelves, recommending reads to customers. At first, she resisted, her teenage angst a shield. But slowly, cracks appeared. One evening, as we unpacked a shipment of mysteries, ironic given our own, she opened up. "I saw the news about David. You were right." We talked for hours, tears mingling with laughter over shared memories of Tom. I held her close, her head on my shoulder, the warmth rebuilding what had fractured. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered. "I love you." In that moment, our bond strengthened, forged anew in forgiveness. Life settled into a gentle rhythm. The bookstore thrived, a community spot where locals gathered for readings and coffee. Sophia's grades improved. She even started dating a kind boy from school, her smiles returning. I dated sparingly, cautious now, but open to possibility. David faded to a shadow, his betrayal a lesson in trust, until the letter arrived. Postmarked from prison, his handwriting unmistakable. "Emily," it read, "our story isn't over. Watch your back. Secrets have a way of resurfacing." My hands shook as I read it, a chill racing down my spine. What new danger lurked? Had he accomplices? I burned the letter, but the threat lingered, a mystery unresolved. Sophia noticed my unease. "What's wrong?" I forced a smile. "Nothing, sweetie, just old ghosts." As I locked up the store that night, the city lights twinkling like watchful eyes, I wondered if peace was ever truly mine. Our romance had been a whirlwind, our rupture a tempest. But this new beginning? It held its own enigmas, pulling me forward with curiosity and caution. What happens next? Even now my heart quickens, eager yet wary for the next chapter.